Nathan Brooks stood in the rain outside his own cafe, watching through the steamed windows as his empire crumbled from the inside. He had built Brooks Coffee Company from a single shop to 200 locations across America, but somewhere along the way he had lost touch with what made coffee shops matter. 3 months ago, his chief operations officer told him the Portland location was failing. Customer complaints filled their inbox. Staff turnover hit record highs. Nathan decided to do something he had never done before. He would work undercover in his own cafe. He pushed open the door, rainwater dripping from his jacket. The cafe looked tired. Worn chairs. Faded paint. But something felt different here than in his other locations. People lingered. They talked. They seemed to actually know each other. A waitress with kind eyes and brown hair pulled into a simple ponytail approached him. She wore a bright blue apron over her uniform. Her name tag read Grace. "Welcome. What can I get you?" she asked. "Just coffee. Black," Nathan said, keeping his voice neutral. Grace smiled and headed to the counter. Nathan chose a table in the corner where he could observe everything. He pulled out a notebook disguised as a novel and began taking notes. The morning rush was starting. Grace moved between tables with practiced ease, remembering orders without writing them down, asking about people's families, their jobs, their lives. Then an older man walked in. His clothes were worn and damp. His face showed the weathered lines of someone who had lived rough. He approached the counter slowly, dignity fighting with desperation in his posture. "I know I don't have enough," the man said quietly to Grace. "But could I get just a small coffee? I have $2. Grace glanced at the register. A small coffee cost $3.50. Nathan watched, pen ready to document another failure in customer service training. This was exactly the kind of situation that required following policy. His company guidelines were clear. But Grace did something unexpected. She smiled at the man with genuine warmth. "It's already paid," she said simply. Those 3 words stopped Nathan cold. His pen froze on the page. "What do you mean?" the man asked, confusion crossing his face. "Someone paid ahead for the next person who needed it. That's you today, Tom. And you know what? Let me get you a large coffee and one of these breakfast sandwiches too. You look cold." Tom's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say. Just promise me you'll pay it forward when you can. That's all." Nathan watched Tom take his coffee and sandwich to a table by the window. The man's hands shook as he lifted the cup to his lips. Other customers smiled at him. One woman named Carol stopped by his table to talk. This was not the failing cafe Nathan expected to find. This was something else entirely. Grace returned to taking orders, moving between tables like she had done this dance 1,000 times. Nathan studied her. She was probably in her early 30s. She wore minimal makeup. Her uniform was clean but worn. She treated every customer the same, whether they ordered a simple coffee or an elaborate drink. When the morning rush calmed, Nathan approached the counter. Grace greeted him with the same warm smile she gave everyone. "Can I get a refill?" he asked. "Of course." As she poured, she asked, "Are you new to Portland? I haven't seen you here before." "Just visiting. Thinking about moving here actually." The lie came easily. "Looking for work?" Grace's face lit up. "You know, we might be hiring soon. You should talk to Jennifer, our manager. We could use someone reliable." Nathan nodded slowly. This was better than he hoped. "I'll do that. Thank you. I'm Grace, by the way. If you come back, ask for me. I'll make sure Jennifer knows you're interested." Nathan returned to his table, his mind racing. Everything he thought he knew about this location was wrong. The numbers said it was failing, but what he witnessed told a different story. Something special happened here. Something his quarterly reports could not measure. He watched Grace help an elderly customer to her seat, saw her split her own lunch with a teenager who came in looking hungry, noticed how she knew everyone's name, and asked about their lives with genuine interest. This woman was either the best actress he had ever seen, or she truly cared about every person who walked through that door. As closing time approached, Nathan made his decision. He would not just observe. He would work here. He would learn what Grace knew that he had forgotten. Those 3 words kept echoing in his mind. "It's already paid." When had he last thought about his business that way? When had he last considered that success might mean something more than profit margins? Nathan walked out into the Portland rain with a plan forming. Tomorrow he would return. Tomorrow he would apply for a job at his own cafe. And somehow, he would figure out how to save this place and learn from the woman who understood what coffee shops were really supposed to be about. Do you believe one person's kindness can change an entire company? Subscribe and comment what you think Grace will teach Nathan about running a real business. Nathan arrived at the cafe at 6 in the morning wearing jeans and a plain green shirt. He had spent the previous evening creating a fake resume under the name Nathan Parker. He left his expensive watch at home. He took a bus instead of his car. He needed to blend in completely. Jennifer Martinez, the manager, met him in her small office behind the counter. She was in her 40s with gray streaking through her black hair. She looked tired but kind. Grace mentioned you might stop by, Jennifer said, glancing at his resume. You have restaurant experience. Some. Mostly kitchen work. But I'm a fast learner. Nathan had actually worked in a cafe during college, before he started his company. That felt like a lifetime ago. Jennifer studied him for a moment. I'll be honest with you, Nathan. This location is struggling. Corporate is talking about shutting us down in 3 months. I can't promise you long-term employment. But if you want the job, it's yours. We need someone who can start today. Nathan felt a pang of guilt. He was the reason this cafe was closing. His decisions. His focus on metrics instead of people. I'll take it. Good. Minimum wage. But we pool tips. Grace will train you today. She's our best employee. Jennifer's voice carried real affection. Don't let her down. Grace arrived 10 minutes later, her brown hair still damp from a shower. She wore the same blue apron from yesterday. When she saw Nathan, her face broke into a genuine smile. You came back. That's great. Jennifer must have hired you. She did. I'm all yours to train. Grace laughed. Okay, Nathan Parker. Let's teach you how to make coffee the right way. The next hours passed in a blur of coffee grounds, steamed milk, and customer orders. Grace was a patient teacher. She showed Nathan how to work the espresso machine, how to foam milk to the perfect consistency, how to remember orders and faces. But she taught him more than coffee making. See that man over there? Grace pointed to a businessman typing on his laptop. That's Richard. His wife left him 2 months ago. He comes in every morning at 7:30 because he can't stand being alone in his apartment. Always orders a double shot espresso and a blueberry muffin. I make sure to chat with him for a few minutes. Sometimes that's the only real conversation he has all day. Nathan watched Richard work, seeing him with new eyes. How do you know all that? I ask. I listen. People need to be seen, Nathan. Really seen. Not just as customers or transactions. As human beings with stories and struggles. Throughout the morning, Grace pointed out different customers and shared their stories. Carol Hughes, the woman who talked to Tom yesterday, had lost her son to cancer 5 years ago and now volunteered at a children's hospital. The teenager Grace shared her lunch with was named Tyler, living in foster care and trying to finish high school. Tom, the homeless veteran, had served 2 tours in Afghanistan before losing everything to PTSD and medical bills. But why do you pay for people's orders? Nathan asked during a quiet moment. You don't make much money here. Grace's expression grew serious. I used to be where Tom is. Not homeless, but close. 4 years ago, I was a single mom with a 2-year-old daughter. I lost my job. I couldn't pay rent. I went to a food bank, and the woman there told me something I never forgot. She said someone had paid for her groceries once when she was struggling, and it changed her life. Not just because of the food, but because someone saw her worth helping. She told me to remember that feeling and pass it on. Nathan felt something shift in his chest. What happened? How did you get back on your feet? A cafe owner gave me a job even though I had no experience. She took a chance on me. This cafe, actually. It was independently owned back then, before Brooks Coffee bought it 3 years ago. The original owner, Mrs. Chen, she taught me everything. She believed in second chances and community. When Brooks bought us out, she retired, but she made me promise to keep her values alive here. Nathan's throat tightened. He had bought dozens of independent cafes, including this one. He never thought about the people behind them, the stories, the community relationships built over years. He had seen only numbers and market expansion. Mrs. Chen sounds like an amazing person, he managed to say. She was. She died last year. But her spirit lives on here. That pay-it-forward board. Grace pointed to a corkboard by the register covered in colorful notes. That was her idea. Customers can prepay for future orders anonymously. When someone needs help, we use those funds. It's not much, but it matters. Nathan studied the board. Dozens of notes. 5 coffees paid forward. 3 breakfast sandwiches for anyone who needs them. $10 for someone having a hard day. The generosity of strangers, orchestrated by Grace and inspired by a woman who had understood what he had forgotten. Grace, can I ask you something personal? Nathan paused, choosing his words carefully. You said you have a daughter. Where is she now? Grace's smile faltered slightly. Amy is 8 now. She's at school. I work here mornings, then at a grocery store evenings and weekends. My neighbor watches Amy when I can't. It's not ideal, but we manage. That's a lot of work. It's what I need to do. Amy has some medical issues, asthma, and some other things. The bills add up. But we're doing okay. Better than we were. Grace straightened her apron, clearly ready to change the subject. Come on, let me show you how to handle the afternoon rush. It gets busy around 2 when the high school lets out. As the day progressed, Nathan watched Grace interact with countless customers. She remembered names. She asked follow-up questions about conversations from previous days. She treated the CEO in a suit the same as she treated Tom, who returned in the afternoon to help sweep the floor, without being asked. During a break, Nathan sat with Jennifer in her office. Grace is remarkable, he said. Jennifer nodded. She's the heart of this place. When corporate says we're failing, they're looking at sales numbers. But they are not measuring what really matters. People come here because of Grace. Because this cafe feels like community. When we close, these people lose something important. Grace loses her income. And I don't know what happens to folks like Tom who depend on the kindness they find here. Nathan felt the weight of his decisions pressing down. He had created a company focused on efficiency and profit. He had optimized everything except humanity. Grace had shown him in one day what years of business school had failed to teach. That evening, as Nathan rode the bus home, he thought about those 3 words. It's already paid. What if he could build an entire company on that principle? What if success meant creating places where Grace's kindness could flourish instead of being crushed by quarterly earnings reports? He pulled out his phone and began making notes. Not as an undercover CEO gathering intelligence, but as a student learning from a master teacher. Grace had given him a gift today. She had shown him what his company could be. Now he needed to figure out how to transform 200 locations to reflect what he had witnessed in this one struggling Portland cafe. The rain continued falling as the bus carried him through the city. But Nathan felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Purpose. A reason to believe his work could matter beyond money. Tomorrow he would return to the cafe. Tomorrow he would learn more. And somehow, he would find a way to honor what Mrs. Chen started and what Grace had faithfully continued. Nathan returned to the cafe every day for the next 2 weeks, falling into the rhythm of early mornings and busy rushes. He learned to make perfect espresso. He memorized regular customers. He began to understand the subtle ecosystem Grace had cultivated. But he also noticed something troubling. One morning, he arrived early to find Grace sitting alone at a back table, her head in her hands. Papers were spread before her. When she heard him, she quickly gathered them up, but not before Nathan glimpsed final notice printed in red across the top. Morning, she said brightly, too brightly. Ready for another day. Nathan nodded, but throughout the morning he watched her more carefully. Grace seemed distracted. She smiled at customers with the same warmth, but something was different. During their lunch break, Nathan found her in the storage room, crying quietly. Grace? What's wrong? She wiped her eyes quickly. It's nothing. Just a hard day. It's not nothing. Talk to me. Grace looked at him for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. I got an eviction notice. I'm 3 months behind on rent. Between Amy's medical bills and everything else, I just couldn't keep up. We have 30 days to move out, and I don't have anywhere to go." Nathan felt like he had been punched. This woman who gave everything to others was losing her home. "How can I help?" "You can't. Nobody can. I've already borrowed from everyone I know. The church helped once, but they have others to support too. I'll figure something out. I always do." But her voice lacked conviction. That afternoon, Nathan watched Grace more carefully and noticed things he had missed before. When customers paid for their orders, Grace consistently rang up totals that seemed low. She was undercharging people. When a mother came in with 3 children and counted out exact change, Grace added an extra pastry to their order and told the kids it was baker's luck. During a quiet moment, Nathan checked the register tape. Grace had undercharged at least a dozen customers that day. She was literally giving away money the cafe needed to stay open. "Grace, I need to show you something," he said, pulling her aside. He showed her the register tape. "You're losing money for the cafe." She bit her lip. "I know. I can't help it. When I see someone struggling, I remember what it felt like. I remember being that person counting pennies, hoping I had enough. I can't charge them full price. I just can't. But the cafe is already in trouble. This makes it worse." "I know," she whispered. "But what's the alternative? Turn away people who need help? Charge the full amount to a mom who can barely afford to feed her kids a treat? I can't do that, Nathan. I'd rather lose my job than lose my soul." Nathan had no response. Grace's moral clarity left him speechless. She was willing to sacrifice everything for principles he had abandoned years ago. That evening, Jennifer called a staff meeting. The news was worse than expected. Corporate headquarters, Nathan's own executive team, had moved up the closure date. The cafe would shut down in 6 weeks instead of 3 months. "I'm sorry," Jennifer said, her voice breaking. "I fought for us. I sent them reports about our community impact. But the numbers don't work. They are closing us down." The small staff sat in stunned silence. Grace reached over and took Jennifer's hand. Tom, who now worked part-time cleaning and doing odd jobs, stared at the floor. 2 other employees, Rachel and Miguel, looked shell-shocked. "What about the Pay It Forward program?" Rachel asked. "What happens to that?" "It dies with the cafe," Jennifer said. "Brooks Coffee doesn't do programs like that. They have their corporate charity initiatives, but nothing local like this." Nathan felt sick. He had created a company that measured success only in profit. He had built a system that would destroy exactly the kind of community his cafes should be fostering. After the meeting, Nathan stayed late to help Grace close. As they cleaned, he noticed a slip money from her own wallet into the Pay It Forward fund. At least $40. "Grace, you can't afford that. You need every dollar." She shrugged. "The fund is running low. People are going to need it tomorrow. The bills will still be there next week whether I put this money in now or not. At least this way it helps someone." Nathan made a decision. That night, he returned to his luxury apartment in downtown Portland and looked around at the expensive furnishings, the view of the city, the life he had built on the backs of places like that cafe. He opened his laptop and began writing. For 3 days, Nathan worked late into the night while still maintaining his cover at the cafe. He analyzed every Brooks Coffee location. He reviewed financial reports. He built a new business model based on everything Grace had taught him. Not a model built on maximum extraction of profit, but one built on community investment and second chances. The numbers surprised him. When he factored in reduced employee turnover, increased customer loyalty, and community goodwill, Grace's approach was actually more profitable long-term. She had been right all along. Kindness was not just moral, it was smart business. During his 4th week at the cafe, Nathan noticed Tom organizing a fundraiser for Grace. Word had spread about her eviction. Regular customers were pooling money. Carol Hughes was coordinating everything. "We're going to raise enough to cover her back rent," Carol told Nathan. "Grace has given so much to this community. Now we give back to her." Nathan watched the community rally. Within 3 days, they had raised over $2,000. But Nathan knew it was not enough. Grace needed more than a temporary fix. She needed stability, health insurance for Amy, a future. That Friday, Grace broke down when Carol presented her with the money. "I can't take this," she protested. "You all need this money too." "We need you more," Carol said simply. "Take it, Grace. Let us help you the way you've helped all of us." Grace accepted the money with tears streaming down her face. Nathan watched from behind the counter, his own vision blurring. This was real community. This was what he had lost sight of when he focused only on expansion and profit margins. That night, Nathan made another decision. He called his assistant, breaking his undercover cover for the first time. "Schedule an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. Tell them it's urgent. And get me the full financial breakdown for every Brooks Coffee location." "Is everything okay, Mr. Brooks?" his assistant asked. "Everything is about to change," Nathan said. "One way or another, everything is about to change." He hung up and looked at the business plan he had created. It was radical. It would require convincing his board to completely restructure how the company operated. But it was right. Grace had shown him the path. Now he needed to find the courage to follow it, even if it cost him everything he had built. The following Monday morning, Nathan called in sick to the cafe. It was the first day he had missed since starting. He put on his tailored suit, styled his hair the way he usually wore it, and drove his BMW to Brooks Coffee headquarters in downtown Portland. The building was glass and steel, modern and cold. His office occupied the entire top floor. As he rode the elevator up, Nathan felt like he was entering a foreign country. This world of quarterly earnings and shareholder meetings felt disconnected from the warm community he had experienced at the cafe. His board was already assembled in the conference room. 12 people who had helped him build his empire. They looked confused when Nathan walked in with unusual intensity. "Thank you for coming on short notice," Nathan began. "I'm going to tell you something that will sound crazy. For the past month, I've been working undercover at our Portland location that we're planning to close." Shocked silence filled the room. Robert Mitchell, his chief financial officer, spoke first. "You've been what?" "Working as a barista. Learning why that location is supposedly failing. And I've discovered something important. We've been measuring the wrong things. We're closing our most successful location, not our worst." "Nathan, the numbers don't lie," Robert said carefully. "That location loses money every quarter. Because we're looking at the wrong numbers." Nathan pulled up his presentation. For the next hour, he walked his board through everything he had learned. He showed them how places with strong community ties had better long-term customer retention. He demonstrated how employee kindness translated into measurable business outcomes. He presented his new business model, built entirely on what Grace had taught him. "You want to turn every Brooks Coffee into a community center?" asked Patricia Wong, his chief operating officer. "That's not scalable." "It already is scaled. Every independent cafe we bought out was doing exactly this. We're the ones who broke what was working." Nathan pulled up photos of the Pay It Forward board, of customers helping each other, of Tom sweeping floors because he wanted to give back. "This is what success looks like. Not the numbers in our reports, but the lives being changed." The debate lasted 3 hours. Half the board thought Nathan had lost his mind. The other half was intrigued but skeptical. Finally, Robert made a proposal. "Give us 3 months. Keep the Portland location open as a pilot program. Implement your model there. If it works, we'll consider expanding it. If it fails, we proceed with the closure and you drop this idea." It was not what Nathan wanted, but it was better than nothing. "Agreed. But I need full control. No interference from corporate. The staff runs it their way." The board reluctantly agreed. Nathan left the meeting feeling both relieved and anxious. He had 3 months to prove Grace's way could work at scale. 3 months to save not just one cafe, but potentially transform his entire company. But when Nathan returned to the cafe that Tuesday morning, everything changed again. Grace was not there. Jennifer met him at the door, her face pale. "Grace is at the hospital. Amy had a severe asthma attack last night. They are keeping her for observation, but Grace doesn't have health insurance. The bills are going to be catastrophic." Nathan felt his stomach drop. "Is Amy okay?" "She's stable now. But Grace is falling apart. This on top of everything else. Jennifer's voice broke. I don't know how much more she can take. Nathan grabbed his jacket. I'm going to the hospital. Cover for me. Of course. Tell Grace we're all praying for her. Nathan found Grace in the pediatric wing, sitting beside a small bed where a little girl with light brown hair slept. Grace looked exhausted. Her eyes were red from crying. She wore the same clothes from yesterday. Nathan, she said, surprised. You didn't have to come. How is she? Better. They got her breathing stabilized. But they want to run more tests. Apparently Amy's asthma is more severe than we thought. They are recommending a specialist, daily medications, possibly some treatments. Grace's voice was hollow. I don't know how I'm going to pay for any of this. The bill for last night alone is over $3,000. And that's before the specialist, before the medications. Nathan sat down beside her. Grace, I need to tell you something. Not now, Nathan. I can't handle anything else right now. It's important. It's about the cafe. He took a deep breath. It's not closing. I made sure of that today. Grace looked at him, confusion in her eyes. How? You're just a barista. How could you make that decision? This was the moment. Nathan had to choose. He could continue the lie, or he could trust Grace with the truth. He thought about the past month, about everything she had taught him, about who she was. He made his choice. Because I own the company, Grace. My name is Nathan Brooks. I'm the CEO of Brooks Coffee. I've been undercover at the cafe, trying to understand why it was failing. But instead, I learned that I'm the one who's been failing. Grace stared at him. Several emotions crossed her face. Shock, disbelief, then anger. You've been lying to me this whole time. She stood up abruptly. You let me train you, talk to you, trust you, and you were just spying on us. It started that way, Nathan admitted. But Grace, you changed everything. You showed me what my company should be. That's why I saved the cafe. That's why I spent all weekend creating a new business model based on what you do naturally. Get out. Her voice was cold. Grace, please listen. I said get out. I trusted you. I thought you were a friend. You're just another rich person playing games with regular people's lives. She turned away from him, facing her sleeping daughter. Nathan stood there, wanting to fix this but not knowing how. He had hurt her. He had betrayed her trust, even if his intentions had evolved. I'm sorry, he said quietly. But I meant everything I said about changing the company. You and Amy will have health insurance. Full coverage. And I want to offer you a real job, not just in one cafe, but helping transform the entire company. I don't want anything from you. Leave us alone. Nathan left the hospital room, his heart heavy. He had saved the cafe but lost Grace's trust. And he was beginning to realize that her trust mattered more than any business success. Back at the cafe, word had spread about Amy's hospitalization. Tom was organizing another fundraiser. Carol was collecting donations. The community was rallying again. When Nathan arrived, Jennifer pulled him aside. Is it true? You're Nathan Brooks? The actual owner. It's true. I'm sorry for not saying anything. Jennifer studied him. Why did you do it? Really? Because I had lost sight of what mattered. I needed to remember. Grace helped me remember. She's a special person, Jennifer said. The best person I know. And you hurt her. I hope whatever plan you have is worth what it cost. Nathan hoped so too. That evening, he made phone calls. He called the hospital and paid Amy's entire bill anonymously. He arranged for specialists. He set up a health insurance policy that would cover Grace and Amy completely. He did everything he could think of to help, even though Grace had told him to stay away. Over the next few days, Nathan continued working at the cafe while Grace stayed at the hospital with Amy. He could feel the staff's changed attitude toward him. They knew his identity now. They were polite but distant. He had gone from being one of them to being the boss again. When Grace finally returned to work a week later, Amy safely at home with improved medications, she avoided Nathan completely. She was professional but cold. The warmth that had made her special was gone, at least toward him. Grace, we need to talk, Nathan tried during a quiet moment. "We don't need to do anything," she replied. "You're the boss. I'm the employee. That's all this is. It's more than that. What I learned from you, it matters. You used me for some corporate experiment. You got what you needed. Let's just leave it at that." Nathan realized he could not fix this with words. He would have to show Grace through actions that he had truly changed. That the past month had not been a game or an experiment. It had been a transformation. But time was running short. The 3-month trial period his board had given him was already starting. He needed Grace's help to make this work. More than that, he needed her forgiveness. Without Grace, all his plans felt hollow and meaningless. Nathan spent the next 2 weeks proving himself. Not as a CEO, but as someone who had learned what really mattered. He arrived before Grace every morning and had coffee ready for her. He took on the hardest tasks. He never mentioned his offer or tried to convince her of anything. He simply walked beside her, trying to demonstrate through actions what his words had failed to convey. Slowly, very slowly, Grace began to thaw. It started with small things. She stopped avoiding him completely. She answered questions with more than one word. One afternoon, when they were both cleaning tables, she finally spoke to him about something real. "I wanted to thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know how, but Amy's hospital bill was paid. And we got health insurance somehow. I know it was you." Nathan kept wiping the table. "You needed help. That's what people do. They help each other. You taught me that." Nathan Brooks, the CEO, has resources I'll never have. That's different from regular people helping. Maybe. But the principle is the same. You've been paying people's coffee bills when you can barely afford your own rent. I paid a hospital bill I can easily afford. The math is different, but the heart is the same. Grace sat down, looking tired. "I don't know what to think about you. Part of me is still angry. But part of me sees that you're actually trying to change. That's more than most people in your position would do." "I have a question for you," Nathan said, sitting across from her. "If you could design the perfect coffee shop, one that served both the business and the community, what would it look like?" Grace looked at him suspiciously. "Why?" "Because I meant what I said about changing the company. The board gave me 3 months to prove this location can succeed using your approach. But I can't do it without you. I need your wisdom, your heart, your understanding of what community actually means. I'm not qualified for that. I'm just a waitress. You're the most qualified person I know. You've been doing this work for years. You understand people in ways that my entire executive team doesn't. Grace, I'm not asking you to become some corporate consultant. I'm asking you to keep doing what you've always done, but with resources and support instead of obstacles." Grace was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, "What exactly do you want from me?" Nathan pulled out the business plan he had been refining. "I want to make you director of community relations, not just for this cafe, but eventually for the entire company. Your job would be to help each location build genuine connections with their community, to implement programs like the Pay It Forward board, to train managers and staff in the kind of hospitality you practice naturally." That sounds like a fantasy. No corporation actually works that way. They could. We could. But only if you say yes. Only if you're willing to trust me again, even though I broke that trust before. Grace looked around the cafe. Tom was helping an elderly customer carry groceries to her car. Carol was adding another $20 to the Pay It Forward fund. 2 teenagers were studying together, coffee cups long empty, but no one rushing them to leave. This was what Grace had built. This was her legacy from Mrs. Chen. "If I say yes, I have conditions," Grace said finally. "Nobody gets fired when we change things. Every person working in your company deserves a chance. We focus on hiring people who need second chances, not just people with perfect resumes. And the community programs have to be real, not just public relations." "I agree to all of that." Nathan felt hope rising. "Does this mean you'll do it?" "I'll try. 3 months, like your board gave you. If it works, we keep going. If it doesn't, I go back to being just a waitress and you leave me alone." She extended her hand. Nathan shook it, feeling like he had just been given a precious gift. Thank you. You won't regret this. I already regret it a little, Grace said, but she was almost smiling. When do we start? Right now. Today. I want to bring in my executive team and have you tell them everything you told me. Show them what you've built here. Help them understand why this matters. Over the next week, Nathan brought different executives to the cafe. Patricia Wong, his COO, spent a day working behind the counter. Robert Mitchell, the skeptical CFO, sat with Grace and reviewed the Pay It Forward program's records. Each executive saw what Nathan had seen. Grace did not lecture or preach. She simply showed them the reality of her community. The turning point came when Robert met Tom. You're the homeless veteran. Robert asked bluntly. I was, Tom replied. Now I'm the guy who keeps this place running. Grace gave me a job. The cafe gave me purpose. The community helped me get housing. I'm 6 months sober and I just got approved for an apartment next month. None of that happens if this place closes. Robert pulled Nathan aside later. I looked at the numbers again. If we factor in what these programs save in marketing costs, in employer retention, in customer lifetime value, it actually pencils out. Grace isn't just good for the soul. She's good for business. I know, Nathan said. That's what I've been trying to tell you. With the executive team on board, Nathan and Grace began implementing changes. First, they expanded the Pay It Forward program. Nathan personally funded it with $10,000 to start. They created training materials based on Grace's approach. They documented everything she did naturally so others could learn it. Then they addressed the bigger issues. Nathan worked with his lawyers to create a hiring initiative focused on second chances. People with criminal records, gaps in employment, or periods of homelessness would be actively recruited, not automatically rejected. Tom would help run the program, using his own experience to mentor others. Grace transformed the cafe's layout. She created a community bulletin board where local organizations could post opportunities. She established a partnership with a local food bank. She started a program where customers could buy a reusable cup that entitled them to free refills if they were going through financial hardship. The changes rippled out quickly. Customer traffic increased. People came not just for coffee, but for connection. Regulars brought friends. The cafe became a genuine third place, somewhere between home and work where people belonged. But challenges emerged too. Some customers complained about homeless individuals in the cafe. Some staff members struggled with Grace's approach, wanting clearer rules and procedures. Nathan found himself constantly defending the new model to other location managers who saw what Portland was doing and felt threatened. One evening, as Nathan and Grace were reviewing progress reports, she said something that struck him deeply. You know what I've realized? You can't just change a company's policies. You have to change its heart. And hearts take time to change. How long did it take to change mine? Nathan asked. Grace smiled. 3 words. But you had to be ready to hear them. Maybe that's the real work. Getting people ready to understand what actually matters. As the first month of the trial period ended, Nathan knew they were making progress. But he also knew the real test was ahead. Could they scale this? Could what worked in one cafe transform an entire company? And most importantly, could he sustain this change when pressure mounted and profits wavered? Looking at Grace as she helped a struggling customer with genuine kindness, Nathan felt something he had not experienced in his corporate career. He felt certain they were doing the right thing, regardless of whether it succeeded by traditional measures. Grace had taught him that success was not just about numbers. It was about lives changed, communities strengthened, and hope restored. The question was whether the rest of the world would see it that way too. If you were running a coffee company, would you choose profits or people? Subscribe to see how Nathan and Grace transform an entire business with kindness. The second month of the trial period brought both victories and tensions. The Portland Cafe's sales had increased by 20%. Staff turnover dropped to 0. Social media reviews glowed with praise for the transformed atmosphere. But other Brooks Coffee locations watched nervously, unsure what these changes meant for their own futures. Nathan divided his time between corporate headquarters and the cafe, trying to bridge 2 worlds. He wore suits to board meetings and aprons at the cafe, living a double life that exhausted him. Grace worked alongside him, developing training programs and helping him understand the human side of business decisions he had made too casually for years. One morning, Nathan arrived at the cafe to find Grace sitting with Amy, who was coloring at a corner table. The little girl looked healthy, her breathing no longer labored thanks to the new medications and specialist care. "This is Amy," Grace said, her voice carrying a warmth Nathan had not heard before. "Amy, this is Mr. Brooks. He's the one who helped make sure you could see the good doctors." Amy looked up with serious eyes. "Are you my mom's boss?" Nathan crouched down to her level. "I'm trying to be her friend, if she'll let me. Mom says you're changing things, making them better." "Your mom is the one changing things. I'm just trying to keep up with her." Amy smiled, then returned to her coloring. Grace watched this exchange with an expression Nathan could not quite read. "She wanted to meet you," Grace explained. "She's heard me talk about the cafe changes and she was curious. I thought it was time." "I'm honored." Nathan meant it. Meeting Amy felt like Grace was letting him into a part of her life she had protected fiercely. That afternoon, Jennifer gathered the staff for a meeting. Nathan stood beside Grace as Jennifer made an announcement. "Corporate has approved expanding our model to 5 more locations. Nathan and Grace will be visiting each one to train their staff and help them transition. This is really happening. Portland isn't just a trial anymore. It's becoming the blueprint." The staff erupted in applause. Tom clapped Nathan on the back. Rachel hugged Grace. Even the skeptical Miguel smiled. The cafe they had fought to save was now leading a transformation. But that evening, Nathan received a troubling call from Robert. "We have a problem. 3 of our highest performing managers have quit. They heard about the changes coming and they don't want any part of it. They think we're going soft, that we're prioritizing feelings over profit." "Then they weren't the right people for us anyway," Nathan replied. "Maybe. But we need managers who can execute. Grace is great with people, but can she actually run multiple locations? Can this touchy-feely approach really scale?" Nathan felt his frustration rising. "Robert, the numbers support this. Customer satisfaction is up. Sales are up. What more proof do you need?" "I need to see it work somewhere besides Portland. That's all I'm saying." Nathan knew Robert was not entirely wrong. Portland had Grace, and Grace was irreplaceable. How could they replicate her genuine compassion across dozens of locations with different managers and staff? He shared these concerns with Grace the next day. They were sitting in the cafe after closing, reviewing expansion plans. "You can't clone me," Grace said simply. "And you shouldn't try. But you can teach principles. You can create systems that make it easier to do the right thing. And you can hire people who already have compassion. They are out there. They just need support and permission to lead with their hearts. My board wants guarantees. They want proof this isn't just one lucky location with one exceptional person." Grace looked at him steadily. "Then let's give them proof. Let's pick the 5 hardest locations you have. The ones that are failing worst. The ones where staff turnover is highest and customer complaints are most common. If we can transform those, we can transform anything." It was a bold proposal. Risky. But Nathan saw the wisdom in it. "You're right. Let's do it." Over the next weeks, Nathan and Grace traveled to struggling Brooks Coffee locations across the country. They went to a cafe in Detroit where the manager ruled through fear. They visited a location in rural Montana where staff felt isolated and unsupported. They spent time at a franchise in Miami where high turnover meant no one stayed long enough to build community connections. At each location, Grace worked her quiet magic. She sat with staff members and listened to their stories. She helped customers feel seen and valued. She showed managers that kindness and accountability were not opposites but partners. Nathan watched her transform skeptics into believers through simple demonstrations of what genuine hospitality looked like. In Detroit, Grace noticed that the manager, a woman named Susan, was dealing with a rebellious teenage son. Instead of just talking about coffee shop procedures, Grace shared her own experiences as a single mother. She connected with Susan as a person first, a manager second. Within days, Susan's entire demeanor changed. She started treating her staff the way Grace had treated her, with understanding and respect. In Montana, Grace discovered the staff felt disconnected from their community. She helped them create a weekly farmers market in the cafe parking lot, turning the location into a gathering place. Suddenly, the cafe was not just a business but a community hub. In Miami, Grace addressed the turnover problem by implementing a mentorship program where experienced staff were rewarded for training newcomers well. She helped create a culture where people invested in each other's success. Each transformation followed the same pattern. Grace led with empathy. She listened before prescribing solutions. She treated everyone, from the newest barista to the most experienced manager, as valuable contributors with wisdom to share. After 6 weeks of traveling, Nathan and Grace returned to Portland exhausted but hopeful. The 5 test locations were showing promising early results. But Nathan knew the real challenge was still ahead. His board wanted a full expansion plan. They wanted to roll out Grace's approach to all 200 locations. That meant training hundreds of managers, thousands of employees, and completely restructuring how the company operated. One evening, as they sat in Grace's small apartment going over training documents while Amy did homework nearby, Grace asked Nathan a direct question. Why does this matter so much to you? You're rich. You built a successful company. You could just sell it and retire. Why are you fighting so hard to change everything? Nathan thought about those 3 words he had heard months ago. It's already paid. Because I had forgotten why I started this company. I opened my first cafe because I loved the idea of creating a place where people could connect. Somewhere warm and welcoming. Then I got focused on growth and profits, and I lost that original vision. You helped me find it again. This isn't just about business anymore. It's about creating something that actually matters. Grace smiled. You've changed, Nathan Brooks. When you first showed up at the cafe pretending to be someone else, you were looking for problems to fix. Now you're looking for people to solve. That's a big difference. I had a good teacher. We taught each other, Grace corrected. You showed me that caring about people and running a successful business don't have to be separate things. I always thought they were incompatible. Nathan looked around Grace's modest apartment. It was clean but sparse. The furniture was old. Amy's room was barely big enough for a twin bed and a small desk. Grace deserved better. Amy deserved better. The plan he was developing would help change that, not just for Grace but for thousands of employees across his company. I have something to tell you, Nathan said. The board meeting is next week. They are going to vote on whether to expand your model company-wide or to go back to the old approach. I need you there. I need you to tell them why this matters. They'll listen to you in ways they won't listen to me. Grace looked uncertain. I'm not good at presentations. I'm just a waitress. You're the director of community relations. And you're the reason we're having this conversation at all. These people need to hear from you. They need to understand that this isn't some pet project of mine. This is the future of the company, if we're brave enough to embrace it. Grace was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Okay, I'll do it, but I'm not wearing a suit. Nathan laughed. Deal. Just be yourself. That's all you need to be. The week leading up to the board meeting, Nathan prepared meticulously. He gathered data, created projections, documented every success story from the pilot locations. But he knew the real decision would come down to something simpler. Would his board choose short-term profit or long-term purpose? Would they trust that investing in people and community would ultimately benefit shareholders? The night before the meeting, Grace called him. I'm scared, she admitted. What if they say no? What if all this work was for nothing? Then we start over, Nathan said. We find another way. But Grace, I don't think they'll say no. You've shown them a better path. They'd be fools not to take it. I hope you're right. Me too. Get some rest. Tomorrow we change everything. The Brooks Coffee boardroom was nothing like the warm, inviting cafe where this journey had started. Glass walls looked out over Portland's skyline. The long conference table gleamed. 12 board members sat in expensive chairs, examining quarterly reports and financial projections. Nathan entered wearing his usual suit, but Grace walked beside him in simple khaki pants and a bright red sweater. She looked out of place and knew it. But she held her head high, carrying a folder of photos and documents from their pilot program. "Thank you for coming, Grace," Patricia Wong said, gesturing to a seat. "We're eager to hear about your work." For the next hour, Nathan presented data. Sales increases, customer satisfaction scores, employee retention statistics. Every metric showed improvement in the pilot locations. Robert Mitchell asked sharp questions about sustainability and scalability, but even he seemed impressed by the numbers. Then it was Grace's turn to speak. She stood up, hands trembling slightly, and began not with statistics but with a story. 2 months ago, I was facing eviction. My daughter was sick. I was working 2 jobs and barely surviving. The cafe where I worked was scheduled to close. I had nothing and nowhere to turn. But the community we had built there rallied around me. They raised money. They supported me. They showed me that I mattered. Not because I was productive or valuable to some business plan, but because I was a human being who needed help. She clicked to a photo of Tom. This is Tom Anderson. When Nathan met him, Tom was homeless and suffering from PTSD. Today, he manages our second chance hiring program and just signed a lease on his own apartment. He's 6 months sober and mentoring 3 other veterans we've hired. Another click. A photo of Susan from Detroit. This is Susan. She was about to quit managing her location because she felt like she was just pushing buttons on a machine. Now she's excited about work again because she understands she's building community, not just selling coffee. Grace went through a dozen more stories. Each one showed a person transformed. Not just customers, but employees and managers. People who had found purpose and connection through the changes they had implemented. "I know you worried about whether this approach can scale," Grace said finally. "I worried about that too. But here's what I've learned. Compassion scales. Kindness scales. When you give people permission to care about each other, when you create systems that support humanity instead of just efficiency, something amazing happens. People want to work for you. Customers become loyal. Communities embrace you. And yes, profits go up. Not in spite of treating people well, but because of it." She sat down, her part finished. The room was silent. Finally, an older board member named George Hamilton spoke. He had been with the company since the beginning, a mentor to Nathan in the early years. "I've watched this company grow from 1 location to 200. I've seen us make a lot of changes. But I've never seen anything like what you're describing. It reminds me of why we started this in the first place. Nathan, your father would be proud. He always said business should serve people, not the other way around." Several other board members nodded. Robert looked at his financial projections again, then closed the folder. "I was prepared to vote no today. I thought this was feel-good nonsense that would destroy our margins. But the data doesn't lie. And more importantly, I spent a day working at the Portland location. I saw what Grace does. It's real. It matters. And it works. I'm voting yes." One by one, the board members indicated their support. Some enthusiastically, others cautiously. But by the end of the meeting, the vote was unanimous. Brooks Coffee would implement Grace's model across all locations over the next 18 months. Nathan felt relief wash over him. Grace looked stunned. "This is really happening?" she asked as they left the boardroom. "It's really happening. You did it, Grace. You changed an entire company." "We did it," she corrected. "You took the risk. You listened. You cared enough to change." The implementation phase moved quickly. Nathan promoted Jennifer to regional director, overseeing the transformation of 50 locations. Tom became national director of second chance hiring, traveling to locations across the country to build programs for people rebuilding their lives. Grace became chief community officer, a newly created executive position. The Portland Café underwent renovations, transforming into the training center for the new model. Managers came from across the country to spend 2 weeks learning not just policies but philosophy. Grace taught every class herself, sharing stories and principles. Some locations embraced the changes immediately. Others resisted. Nathan spent countless hours on calls with frustrated managers who complained that the new approach took too much time, required too much emotional investment, or conflicted with their management style. "Give them time," Grace counseled. "Remember how you felt when you first worked at the cafe. You didn't trust it either. People need to experience the transformation before they can believe in it. 6 months into the rollout, the first quarterly results came in. Company-wide sales were up 8%. Employee turnover was down by 40%. Customer satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. But more importantly, stories were emerging from across the country. Stories of communities being served, lives being changed, and hope being restored. A cafe in Chicago started a tutoring program for neighborhood kids. A location in Phoenix created a job training partnership with a local homeless shelter. A franchise in Boston began donating leftover food to a soup kitchen every evening. Each cafe found its own way to embody Grace's principles while serving its unique community. Grace herself transformed too. No longer just the kind waitress from Portland, she became a voice for a new kind of business leadership. She spoke at conferences. She was interviewed by business publications. She wrote articles about compassion in commerce. But she never forgot where she came from or why this work mattered. One evening, Nathan and Grace stood in the renovated Portland Café after a particularly long training session. The space looked beautiful now. Fresh paint, new furniture, but it retained the warmth that had made it special. The Pay It Forward board remained prominently displayed, covered with colorful notes from customers old and new. "Do you ever miss just being a waitress?" Nathan asked. Grace smiled. "Sometimes. It was simpler. But I couldn't go back now. Too many people need what we're building. Too many lives can be changed if we get this right." "We're getting it right," Nathan assured her. "Look at what's happened in just 6 months. We're making a real difference. Because you let me help. Because you were willing to learn. Most CEOs wouldn't have done what you did." Grace paused, then added softly, "Thank you for listening to me that first day. Thank you for seeing that those 3 words mattered." Nathan thought about how far they had come. From him standing in the rain watching through a window, to this moment where they were partners in transformation. "It's already paid," he said. "That's what you told Tom. But you were talking about more than coffee, weren't you?" "I was talking about grace," Grace replied. "Real grace. The kind that says you're worthy of help not because you earned it, but because you're human. That's what Mrs. Chen taught me. That's what I tried to live. And that's what you're helping spread to hundreds of locations now." "We should probably create a foundation," Nathan said suddenly. "Something that goes beyond just the cafes. Something that can help people get back on their feet, start businesses, rebuild lives." Grace's eyes lit up. The Brooks Foundation. With programs for job training, small business loans, housing assistance. "We could help thousands of people. Millions, eventually," Nathan said. "If we do this right." They spent the rest of the evening planning. Not as CEO and employee, but as partners united in purpose. As friends who had taught each other what mattered. As 2 people who had discovered that business could be a force for genuine good in the world. By the time they finished, it was nearly midnight. As Nathan drove Grace home, he realized something had shifted between them. The professional relationship had deepened into something more. Not romance exactly, but a connection that went beyond business. They were building something together that would outlast both of them. "Same time tomorrow?" Grace asked as she got out of the car. "Same time tomorrow," Nathan confirmed. "We have a lot of work ahead of us." Grace smiled. "The good kind of work. The kind that matters." Nathan watched her walk into her building, then drove home through the quiet Portland streets. The company he had built was becoming something he could be truly proud of. Not because it was profitable, though it was. Not because it was growing, though it was doing that too. But because it was helping people. Because it embodied the values he had lost and Grace had helped him rediscover. Those 3 words had changed everything. "It's already paid." Grace had offered coffee to a homeless veteran without expecting anything in return. Nathan had been paying for that kindness ever since, investing in people and communities across the country. And the returns on that investment were measured not in dollars, but in lives transformed and hope restored. The transformation was just beginning. But Nathan knew they were on the right path. Grace had shown him the way. Now it was his job to make sure that path stayed clear for everyone who came after them. 1 year after Nathan first walked into the Portland Café, Brooks Coffee had become almost unrecognizable from the company he had built. 200 locations now operated under Grace's model. The Brooks Foundation had been established with an endowment of $5 million. And Nathan and Grace had become unexpected symbols of a new approach to business leadership. The Portland Café hosted the foundation's official launch event. Community leaders, business reporters, and Brooks Coffee employees from across the country gathered to celebrate. Tom stood near the entrance, greeting guests in his role as foundation board member. Jennifer managed the logistics with her usual efficiency. Grace, wearing a bright green dress, gave interviews about the foundation's mission. Nathan stood back, watching everything with satisfaction. This was what success looked like. Not quarterly earnings reports, though those continued to improve. Not stock prices, though shareholders were pleased. Real success was measured in the faces of the people around him. People who had found hope, opportunity, and community through what they had built together. Carol Hughes approached him, holding a cup of coffee from the Pay It Forward board. Mr. Brooks, I wanted to thank you personally. My grandson just got hired at your Seattle location. He'd been struggling to find work after leaving prison. Your Second Chance program gave him an opportunity when no one else would. Thank you for telling me that, Nathan said. Stories like that remind me why we do this work. As the event continued, Nathan noticed Grace standing alone for a moment, looking at the Pay It Forward board. He joined her. What are you thinking about? He asked. Mrs. Chen. I wish she could see this. She started with one cafe and a belief that business should serve community. Now look at what's grown from that seed she planted. She'd be proud of you. You carried her vision forward when it would have been easier to give up. Grace smiled. I had help. A stubborn CEO who was willing to learn. Their conversation was interrupted by Patricia Wong, who needed Grace for another interview. As Grace walked away, Nathan felt someone watching him. He turned to find Amy standing nearby, holding a cupcake. My mom says you're her best friend, the 8-year-old said seriously. Is that true? Nathan crouched down to Amy's level. I hope so. She's certainly mine. Are you going to marry her? The question caught Nathan completely off guard. That's not, we're just working together. Amy looked skeptical. You look at her the same way my friend's dad looks at his wife. Like she's special. Out of the mouths of children. Nathan had been carefully not acknowledging his growing feelings for Grace. Their relationship had been professional, collegial. But Amy was right. Somewhere along the way, his respect and admiration for Grace had deepened into something more. Your mom is special, Nathan said carefully. She changed my life. She changed this whole company. So you should tell her that. My teacher says it's important to tell people when they matter to you. Amy took a bite of her cupcake, clearly satisfied with her wisdom. Nathan laughed. You're very smart, Amy. Thank you for the advice. The evening ended with Grace giving a speech about the foundation's goals. She spoke about providing microloans to people starting small businesses, about offering job training and housing assistance, about creating pathways out of poverty and into opportunity. Her words were simple but powerful, delivered with the same genuine compassion she brought to every interaction. As the crowd applauded, Nathan realized that Grace had become not just the heart of Brooks Coffee, but a voice for a larger movement. Other companies were reaching out, asking how to implement similar programs. Grace was being invited to speak at business schools and conferences. She was proving that success and compassion were not contradictory, but complementary. After the event, Nathan drove Grace and Amy home. The little girl fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the excitement. This was a good day, Grace said softly. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. A year ago, I was facing eviction. Now I'm running a foundation and helping change hundreds of lives. You deserve all of it, Nathan said. Everything good that's happening is because you refuse to lose faith in people. We're a good team, Grace replied. You bring the business knowledge and resources. I bring the community connections and values. Together we're building something neither of us could create alone. Nathan pulled up to Grace's building. She had moved to a nicer apartment 6 months ago, one with a real bedroom for Amy and space for Grace to work from home. It was still modest by Nathan's standards, but Grace had refused anything more extravagant. Can I ask you something? Nathan said before Grace got out of the car. Of course. Are you happy? Is this life, this work, what you hope for? Grace thought about it. I'm happier than I've been in years. Amy is healthy. I have meaningful work. I get to help people every day. The only thing that would make it better is if. She trailed off. If what? Grace looked at him directly. If the person I'm building this with saw me as more than just a colleague. Nathan's heart jumped. Grace, I didn't think you'd want that. After how we started, with me lying about who I was. That was a long time ago. You've more than made up for it. Nathan, we spend almost every day together. We're planning the future of this company together. We're launching a foundation together. At what point do we acknowledge that this partnership means more than just business? Nathan reached across and took her hand. I was trying to be professional, trying not to take advantage of our working relationship. But Grace, you're the first thing I think about in the morning and the last thing on my mind at night. Everything good that's happened this year is connected to you. Then maybe we should stop pretending this is only professional, Grace said softly. In the back seat, Amy stirred. Finally, she mumbled sleepily. I told you to tell her. Both adults laughed. Nathan leaned over and kissed Grace gently. It felt right. It felt like the natural progression of everything they had built together. Tomorrow, would you and Amy like to have dinner with me? Not a business meeting. Just dinner. Like normal people who care about each other. We'd love that, Grace said, smiling. As Nathan drove home that night, he felt a contentment he had not experienced in years. His company was thriving. The foundation was launching programs that would help thousands. And Grace, the woman who had taught him what really mattered, was becoming a central part of his life in ways that went beyond business. The next 6 months brought more changes. The foundation's microloan program funded 50 new small businesses in its first quarter. The Second Chance hiring initiative placed over 300 people in stable employment. Brooks Coffee opened its first location specifically designed as a community center, offering not just coffee but meeting spaces, job resources, and support services. Nathan and Grace's relationship deepened. They were careful to maintain professional boundaries at work, but outside the office, they became a family. Nathan joined Grace and Amy for dinners, helped with homework, attended school events. Amy called him Uncle Nathan and taught him to play board games with elaborate rules she made up as they went along. One evening, as Nathan and Grace reviewed foundation applications in her apartment while Amy did homework nearby, Grace's phone rang. It was Tom. Grace, you need to see this, Tom said excitedly. Turn on Channel 7 News. They switched on the television to find a feature story about Brooks Coffee and the foundation. The reporter visited multiple locations, interviewing employees whose lives had been changed, customers whose communities had been strengthened, and small business owners who had received foundation loans. This is what conscious capitalism looks like, the reporter said. A company that measures success not just in profit, but in lives changed and communities served. Amy watched the screen, then looked at her mother. Mom, you're famous. Grace laughed. I'm not famous, sweetheart. I'm just doing what needs to be done. But Amy was partially right. Grace and Nathan had become visible examples of a different way of doing business. They were proving that companies could thrive while serving their communities. That profit and purpose were not enemies but partners. As the news segment ended, Nathan's phone buzzed. Multiple messages from board members and investors, all positive. The publicity was driving both customer traffic and investor interest. The market was responding to their approach not with skepticism, but with enthusiasm. We're changing the conversation, Nathan said, showing Grace the messages. Other companies are starting to follow our example. Good, Grace replied. The more businesses embrace this approach, the more lives get changed. That's always been the goal. They sat together on Grace's couch, Amy between them, watching as the news moved on to other stories. Nathan realized that this simple moment, this quiet evening with Grace and Amy, was more valuable than any board meeting or quarterly earnings report. He had spent years chasing conventional success, building wealth and influence. But real success was found in connection, in purpose, in helping others. Grace had taught him that. She had shown him through a daily example what it meant to lead with compassion. And now they were spreading that lesson across the country, one cafe and one changed life at a time. The ripples from those 3 words Grace had spoken a year ago continued spreading outward, touching more lives than Nathan could count. It's already paid. That simple act of kindness to a homeless veteran had set in motion a transformation that was still unfolding. And Nathan knew they were just getting started. 18 months after the board's approval, Brooks Coffee had become a case study in business schools across America. Grace and Nathan received invitations to speak at conferences. Their story was featured in major publications. But they remained focused on the work itself, not the recognition. The foundation expanded beyond microloans. They launched a housing assistance program that helped formerly homeless individuals secure apartments. They created partnerships with community colleges to offer free barista training as a pathway to stable employment. They established a scholarship program for children of Brooks Coffee employees. Every initiative focused on creating pathways to opportunity. Tom's Second Chance hiring program had placed over 500 people in jobs across the company. Each success story reinforced Nathan's belief that people deserved opportunity regardless of their past. Tom himself had become a national spokesperson for veteran employment issues, speaking passionately about how a single chance had transformed his life. One morning, Nathan arrived at the Portland Café to find Grace meeting with a young woman he did not recognize. The woman was thin, nervous, wearing clothes that were clean but worn. Grace saw Nathan and waved him over. "Nathan, this is Rebecca. She just completed our job training program." "Rebecca, this is Nathan Brooks, our CEO." Rebecca's eyes widened. "The actual CEO? Grace, you didn't tell me." "I didn't want you to be nervous," Grace said gently. "Nathan, Rebecca is starting as a barista next week. She's been in recovery for 6 months and is rebuilding her life. I thought you should meet her." Nathan shook Rebecca's hand. "Welcome to Brooks Coffee. Grace tells me you did excellent work in the training program." "I'm trying," Rebecca said quietly. "This job means everything to me. It's my chance to prove I can be reliable again, to show my kids that their mom is getting her life together." Nathan saw in Rebecca's eyes the same hope he had seen in Tom's a year and a half ago. "You'll do great. And remember, everyone here is rooting for you. We all get second chances. That's what this place is about." After Rebecca left, Grace turned to Nathan. "She reminds me of myself years ago. Scared, uncertain, but determined to build something better. You've built an amazing life, Grace. And you're helping hundreds of people build theirs too." "We're helping them," Grace corrected. "This only works because you had the courage to change everything. Most CEOs wouldn't have done that." They walked through the cafe together, observing the morning rush. The space was busy but calm. Customers chatted with baristas who knew their names. The Pay It Forward board was covered with colorful notes. A community bulletin board advertised local events and job opportunities. This was what a cafe should be. This was what Mrs. Chen had envisioned and Grace had preserved. That evening, Nathan had a surprise for Grace. He picked her and Amy up and drove to a newly renovated building downtown. The sign above the door read Brooks Community Center. "What is this?" Grace asked. "Your next project," Nathan said, grinning. "The board approved it last week. We're opening community centers in 20 cities over the next 2 years. Each one will offer job training, housing assistance, small business support, and childcare. You're going to design the programs and oversee the launches." Grace stared at the building, tears forming in her eyes. "Nathan, this is incredible. You said we needed to do more than just serve coffee. You were right. This is how we do more." They toured the building. It had classrooms for training programs, a child key center so parents could attend classes without worrying about their kids, meeting rooms for small business consultations, computer labs for job searches and resume building. Everything designed to help people move from crisis to stability. Amy ran through the building excitedly, declaring which room would be best for different activities. Her joy was infectious. Watching her, Nathan thought about how much had changed. This little girl who had struggled with asthma attacks in a hospital now raced through a building that would help thousands of families like hers. "Can we afford this?" Grace asked, always practical. Barely, Nathan admitted. But we'll make it work. The foundation is attracting major donors. We have companies wanting to partner with us. And honestly, even if it stretches us financially, it's worth it. This is our legacy, Grace. This is what we'll be remembered for. Over the next months, they worked to launch the first community center. Grace hired staff who understood what it meant to serve people with dignity. She designed programs that addressed real needs, not just what looked good on paper. She created partnerships with local organizations, so the center became part of the community fabric rather than an outside imposition. The grand opening attracted national media attention. Politicians came to praise their work. Business leaders studied their model. But the most meaningful moment came when an elderly woman approached Grace during the celebration. "My grandson got his GED through your training program," the woman said. "He's starting community college next month. First person in our family to go to college. You gave him hope when he thought he had none." Grace hugged the woman, both of them crying. This was why they did this work. Not for media attention or business awards, but for moments like this. For families being lifted up. For hope being restored. As the community center settled into operation, Nathan and Grace turned their attention to scaling the model. They documented everything. They created training materials. They built partnerships with local organizations in each city where they planned to open centers. The work was exhausting but fulfilling. One evening, working late in Grace's apartment while Amy slept nearby, Nathan set down the planning documents he was reviewing. "Grace, I need to ask you something." She looked up from her laptop. "What is it?" "Marry me." Grace blinked, clearly not expecting this. "What?" "I know this seems sudden. But it's not really. We've been building a life together for over a year now. We're partners in every way that matters. Amy calls me Uncle Nathan, but I want to be more than that. I want to be her dad, if she'll have me. And I want you to be my wife. Not because it makes business sense, but because I love you. Because you changed my life and I want to spend the rest of it making sure you know how extraordinary you are." Grace was crying now. "Nathan Brooks, are you seriously proposing while we're working on community center budgets?" "Is that a no?" "It's a yes, you ridiculous man. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, we'll be a family." She kissed him, then laughed. "Amy is going to be so smug. She's been telling me for months that you were going to propose." They woke Amy to share the news. The little girl's reaction was pure joy. "Does this mean you're my real dad now?" "If you want me to be," Nathan said, his throat tight with emotion. "I do," Amy said decisively. "You've been acting like my dad anyway. Might as well make it official." The three of them sat together on Grace's couch, planning not just a wedding but a life. Nathan thought about how far he had traveled from the CEO who stood in the rain watching through a cafe window. He had been searching for what was wrong with his business. Instead, he had found what was missing from his life. Grace had taught him that success was not measured in possessions or power, but in relationships and purpose. She had shown him that the best leaders serve rather than demand. And she had demonstrated daily that kindness was not weakness but strength. Now they would build their future together. Not just as business partners but as husband and wife. As a family committed to creating opportunities for others. As people who understood that being blessed meant becoming a blessing to others. The work would continue. More community centers would open. More lives would be changed. More hope would be restored. But the foundation of everything was the relationship between two people who had taught each other what really mattered. A CEO who learned to see beyond profit. A waitress who never stopped believing in the power of kindness. Together, they were proving that business could be a force for genuine good in the world. That companies could thrive while lifting communities. That success and compassion were not contradictory, but complementary. And it all started with 3 words spoken to a homeless veteran in a struggling cafe. "It's already paid." Grace had offered kindness without expectation of return. Nathan had been trying to repay that kindness ever since, spreading it across hundreds of locations and thousands of lives. The debt could never be fully paid. But that was the point. Kindness was not meant to be repaid but passed forward, creating ripples that spread endlessly outward, touching lives in ways that could never be fully measured. 2 years after Nathan first walked into the Portland Café, the transformation was complete. Brooks Coffee operated 200 locations, each embodying Grace's principles of community service and compassionate leadership. The Brooks Foundation had awarded over 3,000 microloans, placed 1,200 people in jobs through second chance hiring, and opened community centers in 15 cities. The company's market value had doubled even as it invested heavily in social programs. The Portland Café looked much as it had that rainy morning when Nathan arrived incognito. The same tables and chairs, worn but comfortable. The same warm lighting. The same community bulletin board and pay-it-forward notes. But everything had changed. This cafe was no longer scheduled for closure, but celebrated as the birthplace of a movement. Today, the cafe hosted a different kind of gathering. Not a business meeting or foundation event, but a wedding. Grace and Nathan were getting married where their journey had begun, surrounded by the community that had shaped both their lives. Tom stood beside Nathan as best man, wearing a suit that fit properly for the first time in years. Jennifer served as Grace's maid of honor, beaming with pride. Amy, now 10 years old and healthy, was a flower girl, taking her role very seriously. The cafe was packed with employees from across the country, customers who had become friends, people whose lives had been changed by the programs Grace and Nathan had built. Grace walked down the makeshift aisle between cafe tables, wearing a simple but elegant bright blue dress. She carried a small bouquet of flowers that Amy had helped choose. Her eyes found Nathan's, and everything else faded away. This was the woman who had taught him what mattered. The person who had transformed not just his business but his entire understanding of success and purpose. The ceremony was simple. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to continue building a life of service together. To raise Amy with love and purpose. To use their resources to lift up others. To never forget what had brought them to this moment. "I promise to see you," Nathan said. "Really see you. The way you taught me to see everyone. Not as an employee or a partner, but as the remarkable woman who saved my soul when I didn't even know it was lost." Grace smiled through her tears. "I promise to keep reminding you what matters. To pull you back when you get lost in spreadsheets and metrics. To make sure we always measure success by lives changed, not profits earned. And to love you with the same certainty I feel in this moment every single day." They kissed as husband and wife while their community cheered. Carol Hughes wiped away tears. Rebecca, the former addict who now managed a Brooks Coffee location in Seattle, applauded loudly. A dozen people whose lives had been changed by the foundation celebrated the union of the two people who had made it all possible. The reception transformed the cafe into a party. Music played. People danced between tables. Amy commanded the center of attention, introducing people and telling anyone who would listen about her new dad. Tom gave a toast that began with jokes and ended with genuine emotion about second chances and grace, both the concept and the person. "A few years ago, I was homeless," Tom said, his voice steady. "I walked into this cafe with $2 and a lot of shame. Grace told me my coffee was already paid for. Those 3 words changed my life. Not just because I got free coffee, but because someone saw me as worth helping. Today, I manage a program that's helped hundreds of veterans find work and housing. I have my own apartment. I'm sober. I have a purpose. None of that happens without Grace. And none of the company transformation happens without Nathan being willing to learn. They taught all of us that business can be about more than money. It can be about making the world better, one person at a time." Jennifer spoke next, sharing stories of watching Grace turn a failing cafe into a community hub. Patricia Wong talked about how Grace had changed her understanding of what good management looked like. One by one, people stood to share how Nathan and Grace had impacted their lives. Finally, Nathan stood to speak. 2 years ago, I stood outside this cafe in the rain, watching through the window. I was a successful CEO who had lost sight of why I started my company. I thought I was here to fix a failing location. Instead, I found someone who could fix me. Grace showed me that success isn't about how much you accumulate, but how much you give away. That the best leaders serve rather than command. That every person, regardless of their circumstances, deserves dignity and opportunity. She taught me what my father tried to tell me years ago, but I was too ambitious to hear. That business should serve people, not the other way around. He looked at Grace, seated beside him. My wife, that still sounds amazing to say, once told me you can't just change a company's policies. You have to change its heart. She was right. And she changed my heart first. Everything good that's happened since that rainy morning flows from her compassion and wisdom. I'm the luckiest man alive to get to spend my life learning from her. As the celebration continued, Nathan and Grace slipped outside for a moment alone. The Portland evening was cool and clear. They stood on the sidewalk where Nathan had watched through the window 2 years before. Did you ever imagine this? Nathan asked. When you were working here just trying to pay your bills, did you think your life would turn out like this? Grace laughed. Never. I just wanted to help people. To honor Mrs. Chen's legacy. To be a good mom to Amy. I didn't dream about transforming a company or starting a foundation or marrying a CEO. Those things happened because you let them happen. Because you were willing to change. We changed each other, Nathan said. I gave you resources and platform. You gave me purpose and direction. We're better together than either of us could be alone. That's what marriage is supposed to be, Grace said, leaning into him. Two people helping each other become their best selves. They stood quietly for a moment, then Grace said, I have something to tell you. I was going to wait until tonight, but I can't keep it in. I'm pregnant. Nathan pulled back to look at her, stunned. You're pregnant? We're having a baby. We're having a baby. Amy is thrilled. She's been wanting a sibling for years. Nathan kissed her, overwhelmed with joy. Their family was growing. Their work was expanding. Their impact was spreading. Everything they had built together was bearing fruit in ways he could never have imagined. That night, as the celebration wound down, Nathan stood in the cafe looking around. This space had witnessed so much transformation. It had been an independent cafe under Mrs. Chen's loving leadership. It had become a corporate location that lost its soul. Then Grace had preserved its heart even as everything else changed. And finally, it had become the birthplace of a movement that was spreading across the country. Tom was cleaning tables, a task he did not have to do but chose to do anyway. Jennifer was coordinating with the catering staff, making sure everyone was fed. Amy was asleep on a booth, worn out from the excitement. And Grace stood at the pay-it-forward board, reading notes from customers. Nathan joined her. The board was full, as always. 5 coffees paid forward for anyone who needs them. Breakfast sandwich for someone having a hard morning. $10 towards someone's order, just because. This is where it all started, Grace said. Mrs. Chen taught me about paying kindness forward. I taught you. Now hundreds of thousands of people are participating in this across all our locations. The ripples keep spreading. What do you think Mrs. Chen would say if she could see all this? Nathan asked. Grace smiled. She'd probably say we're making it too complicated. She'd remind us that it's simple. See people who are struggling. Help them. Create space for them to help others when they can. Build community. Love generously. The rest is just details. Smart woman. The smartest. I miss her every day. They stood together in the cafe that had changed both their lives. Outside, Portland continued its evening rhythm. People walked past the window, most not knowing the story of what had happened in this space. But some knew. Some came here specifically because they had heard about the cafe where kindness transformed a company. Where a CEO learned to see past profit margins. Where a waitress taught the world what real success looked like. What's next? Nathan asked. We've accomplished so much. Where do we go from here? Grace thought about it. We keep doing what we're doing. We open more community centers. We help more people rebuild their lives. We raise our children to understand that they are blessed so they can be a blessing to others. We stay humble and remember where we came from. And we never forget that every person who walks through our doors has a story and deserves to be seen. Sounds perfect, Nathan said. They turned off the cafe lights and locked the door. Nathan drove his new family, Grace and Amy, to the home they now shared. It was a comfortable house, nice but not ostentatious. Grace had insisted on something appropriate, not excessive. They wanted Amy to grow up understanding that happiness came from relationships and purpose, not possessions. As they drove through the city, Nathan reflected on his journey. He had started as a man who measured everything in dollars and market share. He had become someone who measured success in lives changed and communities strengthened. The transformation had been uncomfortable at times, requiring him to acknowledge how wrong his priorities had been. But it had also been the most rewarding experience of his life. Grace dozed in the passenger seat, exhausted from the day's emotions. Amy slept in the back. Nathan looked at them and felt overwhelming gratitude. These two people had given his life meaning beyond anything he had achieved in business. They were his real success, his genuine accomplishment. The next morning, Nathan woke early and went for a walk. He found himself heading to the cafe, drawn there by habit and affection. He stood outside, looking through the window the way he had that rainy morning 2 years before. But this time he was not searching for problems to fix. He was simply appreciating what they had built. Inside, he could see the Pay It Forward board, the community bulletin board, the tables where people would gather later to walk, talk, and connect. This was what a cafe should be. This was what business should serve. Not just profit, but people and community. Nathan's phone buzzed. A text from Tom. Just placed 3 more veterans in jobs. This never gets old. Another text from Jennifer. Seattle location just hit their fundraising goal for local school supplies. The community is really coming together. A third text from Patricia at headquarters. 3 more companies reached out asking how we built our model. Grace's approach is spreading beyond just our company. Nathan smiled. The ripples continued spreading. What Grace had started with 3 words to a homeless veteran had grown into something that was changing not just Brooks Coffee, but the broader business world. They were proving that compassion and profit were not enemies but partners. That companies could thrive while serving their communities. That success could be measured in more than shareholder returns. He walked home to find Grace and Amy awake and making breakfast. His wife, his daughter, his family. The real measures of his success. Everything else, all the business achievements and recognition, were just tools to solve what mattered most. Love, community, purpose, second chances. Grace. There's my husband, Grace said, smiling. Out for your morning walk. Just visiting the cafe. Checking on where it all began. Never forget, Grace said. Never forget the person you were standing in that rain, or the person you became when you walked through the door. That journey is what makes all of this meaningful. I won't forget, Nathan promised. How could I? You remind me every day what really matters. They sat together as a family, eating breakfast and planning their day. Simple moments. Ordinary joys. But infused with purpose and gratitude. They had been blessed, and they were using those blessings to help others. They had found success, and they were redefining what success meant. They had built something beautiful, and they were determined to keep building. Outside, a new day was beginning in Portland. Across the country, Brooks Coffee locations were opening their doors. Community centers were welcoming people seeking second chances. Foundation programs were helping families move from crisis to stability. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that Grace had lived and Nathan had learned. Kindness matters. Community matters. People matter. Success is not about how much you accumulate, but how much you give away. And sometimes, 3 words spoken in compassion can change not just one life but thousands. It's already paid. Grace had offered that gift to Tom. Nathan had learned to offer it to Grace, to their employees, to their communities. And together, they were teaching the world that Grace, both the concept and the woman, could transform everything it touched. The story that began in a struggling cafe had become a movement. The CEO who came to fix a failing location had found something far more valuable. The waitress who refused to lose faith in people had shown an entire company what real leadership looked like. And together, they had built something that would outlast both of them. A family. A foundation. A company that served rather than exploited. A model for how business could be a force for genuine good in the world. It was not perfect. Challenges remained. More work lay ahead. But they faced it together, supported by a community they had helped create and inspired by values they had chosen to embrace. As the sun rose over Portland, casting light on a city full of people seeking connection and opportunity, Nathan and Grace knew they were exactly where they were meant to be. doing exactly what they were meant to do, building the life and legacy that would matter long after they were gone. And it all started with 3 words. 3 simple words that changed everything. It's already paid. The coffee was paid for. The grace was extended. The transformation was complete. And the ripples would continue spreading, touching lives and changing hearts for generations to come.